You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the drummer for the multi-platinum selling and 13-time Juno-nominated band, The Tea Party, as well as the supergroup Crash Karma. So welcome to the podcast, Jeff Burrows. Jeff, how are you? And is it true that you played hockey against Ty Domi for 6 years and you survived to talk about it?
Yeah, I got to play hockey against Ty Domi. And hi, how are you, Joel? It's a pleasure to be on here. I've been watching for a long time. And when I was younger, I really enjoyed my travel hockey and my travel baseball. And Ty used to play he grew up in a town called Belle Riviere, Belle River. And we were from La Salle. So we were called Sandwich West back then. And we played against Ty quite a bit. He wasn't a fast guy. He wasn't a goal scorer. That's why when this band was kind of really starting to get moving, I'm like looking over and I'm reading the newspaper and I'm thinking, Ty Domi? Really? Not this kid named Ryan Reno, who ended up playing university hockey and so on and so forth. But he was like the 300 goal scorer kind of guy, the Wayne Gretzky type guy. And Ty was just a good hockey player, a great soccer player, a great football player. So not only did I play hockey against him, Stuart Chatwood, our bass player, keyboard player, played very good soccer. So he played against Ty in soccer in high school. And he was the kicker because he was such a good soccer player that he played against Ty in football. But thank God not getting tackled by Ty in football.
Was there any way for Ty to be aggressive in soccer? Could he still be the enforcer in soccer? Or?
I don't know. He could have. I really don't know. I don't even understand soccer, so I don't care.
That's so funny. So when I was promoting that this interview was coming up, I had all these fans send in fan questions. So I'm going to sprinkle them in throughout the interview.
Okay.
And I also had some very successful musicians reach out and say, look, I love Jeff. I want to share some kind words. So I wanted to kick this off powerfully. So I have some kind words that are sent in from Renee Couture, the drummer for the Standstills. And she's amazing. And she sent in basically a novel. So she really, really loves you. And here it goes. So she says, I have a quote and a story for Jeff. Jeff has been a massive role model in my life since I took to drums over 20 years ago. Not only is he one of the best drummers on the planet in one of the coolest bands ever, he's also an all-around amazing human being. Everyone who knows him knows he's the most selfless, generous, and compassionate person you'll ever meet. His ongoing and really nonstop charity work for his community is far beyond anything I have seen and a huge inspiration to myself and my band. He has always been there for us and supported us throughout our careers, something I'll never be able to thank him enough for. A true legend and a friend. And it says, I have a quick story about how rad Jeff is. So she says, back in our early days as a band, I passed off a CD of ours to Jeff at a show of theirs. Fast forward a few months later, and the Tea Party were in Toronto for a show at the Sound Academy, 2011, I believe. And on the night before, we were playing the Bovine. Jeff and Stuart came to our show. We were shocked. When we finished our set, Jeff proceeded to help me tear down my kit and carry my gear out to our van. As a super fan of the Tea Party, I couldn't believe what was happening. Then he persists that we open for them the next night and tells me he's going to make a few phone calls. Sure enough, the next morning we got the call from their agent and we opened for the Tea Party that night at the Sound Academy. That show opened the door for us, and he's been in our corner ever since. So that's from Renee from the Standstills.
Yeah, she and Johnny are absolutely adorable. There's a picture floating around of Renee when she's either 10 or 11 years old, and I'm at some sort of convention. It was Dale Harrison and I when Dale was playing with the Headstones. And I think we were at the Sabian cymbal booth, and she came with either her dad or whomever, I can't remember. And we got this picture, and there's goofy old me with this little girl, and now here she is, a wonderful, beautiful, intelligent young woman just bashing away on the drums and gaining success worldwide and across Canada and starting to really break it in the States. So how can you not be happy for someone like that? She's wonderful.
She's
And
become
that's touching. That's embarrassing.
she's become a rock star drummer in her own right.
Yeah,
So she
she's
took some
fantastic.
pages from your book, I believe. And
Yeah,
I saw her at an intimate show in Kingston, and then I saw her at the Bronson Center opening up for Big Wreck. So
yeah.
they've been on some amazing, amazing tours.
Oh yeah.
Love those guys. And she mentioned that you do a lot of charity work. So some of the charities that you've locked arms with include the White Ribbon Campaign, Ivory Dad Walk, Transition to Betterness, and Motorcycle Ride for Dad. Why do you think it's important that those that achieve success then turn around and give back to those in need?
Um, I don't. It's important to me. I mean, I can't speak to others, but I've done these types of things for quite a while, and I mean, A, I enjoy them, and B, I feel that if you're in a position and you do have a little bit of extra time, it's not necessarily about throwing your money out and here, I'd rather help you, and here's a check for 10 grand, or here's a check, and so on. I'd rather get the hands dirty and lead by example. When I I do this drum marathon every year, and it's for 6 different mental health charities now. And this was my 17th year. I just completed a 24-hour drum marathon, and the way it makes you feel, and the way the community comes together, and bands and solo artists and duos come together to help the cause, not me, but the cause. It's fantastic, and it's a community spirited thing. I think um, as time goes on and as technology becomes more and more prevalent, we're losing that face to face opportunity to make friends, meet like minded people who are willing to help, and so on and so forth. So it's that type of thing and that type of messaging that I like to get across. And rest assured, I've got so many people in my corner that help with so much, and it's a wonderful experience. It gets a little get a little anxious leading up to those types of things, but it's always fun, and it's great. And we've got such huge community support.
And how does a 24-hour drum marathon work? Is it you have just a ton of drummers that play 30 minutes each? Are you playing for 24 hours? How does this work?
So this year was the first year we changed it, but normally I start at midnight, and I have different bands join me every hour or two. And I get that 5 minute break between each band switching. So they're bringing their different amps. It's pretty quick. So I get to go to the washroom break, and then grab a water, and then come back on stage and continue. So it's midnight to midnight. This year, we tried it where we moved it for 12 hours out into the county to try to make more money. I mean, that's what it's really about for these entities, these charitable entities. So I did 12 hours there, noon until midnight. And then the next day I went back to the home base where I normally do it. And it was a huge success. So we finally literally got all the monies together last week. So we'll be doing a presentation soon for all of the 6 charities.
That's amazing. So we're going to be doing a full 2-hour deep dive interview here. We are going to cover your life, your career, your discography, but we're going to start all the way back to the beginning. So where did this love of music come from? Do you have an earliest musical memory that comes to you now when I ask about the early days?
The earliest musical memory, my father was a police officer, and my mom was a homemaker in our early years, for my older sister and younger brother. And my mom and my dad were just such huge music fans. My father is a drummer. Now he's a collector of drums and probably the ultimate aficionado when it comes to Ludwig snare drums, and literally from the 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way until now. But the earliest memory would be listening to records with my mom and pretending to play drums on the carpet in front of those great big, long, low-lying stereos. From there, both my sister and I took piano lessons, and my mom just thought it would be something, to expand our horizons, because I was such I don't want to say I was a huge athlete, but when you're a kid, everybody wants to be a hockey player, everyone wants to be a baseball player, and now soccer player. So that is what started me in conservatory piano. And I had always heard that my dad was a drummer, and I had never seen him. He was always tapping away and whatnot, but I had never seen him play. And one day I was in our basement and I was doing what kids do and being very nosy. And I'm checking under his workbench with all of his tools, and I see a drum kit, and I'm like, what is this? So
It wasn't set up?
it wasn't set up. Apparently, he was moonlighting, doing some dates with a country band because he was a police officer, and he always did extra things for extra money to provide for us. He's such a great dad. Anyway, I found it, and he said, "So you want to learn drums?" And I said, "Yes, please." And he said, "Well, you're not touching these." So he got out his old practice pad from when he was a kid, from literally 1955. And he bought me some field drumming sticks and a rudimentary book. And he started teaching me essentially the basics from 5-stroke rolls, 3-stroke rolls, flams, paradiddles, the whole thing. And from there, I just got a little bit better. And then I started reading a little bit. And then we went out and bought a drum kit. I bought the drum kit with my own money because I was a paper boy and I had aspirations of having lots of things when I was a kid. So drum kit, stereo system, all of these things. And got the drums. My father is also a carpenter. So we refinished these old Motown drums that were literally wrapped in leather with this really nice pearl finish. Then I remember I saved up a little bit more and I bought a 14-inch crash cymbal with a Ludwig boom stand and another crash, I think, for $235, I remember. And that was a lot of money back then. I was making about $25 a week doing newspapers. So, and that was it. From there, I just fell in love with, playing drums and putting on my parents' big cans and, have this extension cord from the drum kit to across the family room and just listening to, whatever was popular at the time and trying to play it.
You mentioned Motown. Didn't your dad find success performing for Motown bands on the road?
Yeah, he did a lot of performances, a lot of shows. He played in a band called the Fabulous Pharaohs that were out of Chatham. And they used to sell out, pavilions in and around the Tri-County area, Essex County, Kent County, Lambton County, a lot of work in Motown. And still a very, very good drummer. But his passion now lies with, I don't know if you can see him in the background, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got at least a dozen snare drums of the Ludwig brand, which I'm falling in love with again. That range in age from the 50s through to the 90s right now. But he's got the collection of all collections, so it's pretty interesting.
So your dad, with his collection of drums, does he love that his son is sponsored by these amazing drum companies?
He's always been cool with that. I mean, I have a half brother, his other son Mackenzie, who also plays drums, and there's a zillion drum kits. I mean, behind me, I've got my DW drums, and then I've got a 1979 completely redone set of Vistalite orange drums, Ludwig. And then there are 3 1960s kits for each of my kids and one for me. And then, of course, all the djembes and doumbeks and whatnot. So, yeah, he loves it, but he's pretty hardcore Ludwig. So if it's not Ludwig for him, it's clap.
You could raise money for charity by opening up your basement as a drum museum, I think.
More so my dad's basement. There are a lot of people who really want to visit his basement, and he's been sick, but he's on the mend now. So I think he's going to be taking a lot of people up on that, or they're going to be taking him up on the offer of coming to his magnificent basement.
And you mentioned that the djembe behind you there, that was used on the album The Edges of Twilight. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's rosewood, and it's from Africa. It is an animal skin or animal hide, and we took it on the road probably all the way through up until maybe 99, like the Triptych era. But I just, I was noticing the tuning just going up and down, and I really wanted to keep it as it is. And it's just, it's such a work of art that I didn't really want to mess with it. So now, easily enough, world percussion has become so popular over the last 30 years, 20 years. Now I have a great modern one that just does the trick, and you don't have to worry about it traveling.
So outside of your dad probably being your biggest influence, biggest drum influence growing up, who would you say were your biggest drum influences, the artists that had already made it big, that you looked at them and they were just masters at their instrument, and you thought, man, if I dedicate my life to this, if I take lessons, if I practice, that is the pinnacle of what is achievable on my instrument?
Yeah, I think, it's like everyone my age. There's always been Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, John Bonham, of course. But I was lucky to have my dad really be involved with the jazz scene. And so your Buddy Rich and your Max Roach and your Gene Krupas and all of those standard amazing greatest players in the world that you could never, I mean, I couldn't anyway, but you aspire to play like them, but they perform like dance on the drums. It's hard to imagine being able to play like that. I mean, there are some great Canadian drummers that can do that. Like Jeremy Taggart, for instance, is just such an amazing jazz drummer that fuses it into his rock, you know, subject matter and create something completely different. And I admire that. I just don't have that. I'm more meat and potatoes and enjoy it. But yeah, those are the main influences, I guess you could gather.
I had Jeremy on the podcast at the start of the year, and it was amazing because I went through the entire Our Lady Peace discography. And when you have that such a wide range of music over a long period of time, you could really see Jeremy's drumming as being one of the highlights of that band.
Truly was. And the way that they're mixed, they're quite a bit in the forefront, which is interesting because I mean, harkening back to the jazz era, the drums weren't really ever in the forefront. But then when you hear your Zeppelins and you hear your Rush stuff, it is. And then when you hear the quirkiness of a Stuart Copeland, it was. But those were very different compared to most, rock genres. So I definitely appreciate the OLP stuff that has those mixes so upfront.
So you got into music pretty early, but before falling in love with music, was there anything as a kid that you wanted to be when you grew up? Some kids want to be firefighters, like maybe an NHL player. Anything else?
Yeah, it was probably a hockey player or baseball player. If we're talking pre 12 years old or pre 10 years old, it was definitely that. I had the parents who were so vested in each of us three kids, that coming home from work, I can hardly imagine it now. I mean, my kids are grown up, but coming home from work after a long day's work, being a cop, getting dinner in quick, loading gear and helping me load gear into the car, driving an hour and a half to get to a hockey game, and then having to get up again at 6 a.m. the next day. It tires me out thinking about it. But that's what the great parents do. And I can honestly remember, I mean, I loved hockey so much, but I was better at baseball, but I still loved baseball, but hockey was just so much fun. So I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate.
I'm a goalie. I played hockey this morning at 7 a.m. and Jeff, I'm ashamed. We gave up a 3-0 lead in the first and we lost the game. So
Wait a minute. we gave up. I think Joël Martin gave up 3 goals and you lost.
How dare you, sir? We will not talk about the complete collapse of the defense.
Where's
Anyways,
my
I
defense?
regret bringing this up immediately, but to change the subject, if I were to meet you at 12 years old, so I believe you got into music and playing at around 11. If I met you at
Yeah.
12, who would I be meeting?
You'd be meeting a kid with tight Levi's, a cutoff shirt, hair parted in the middle, my goody comb in the back, listening to Rush, AC/DC, the Cars, and with my buddy Jeff Martin right next to me.
That
And yeah, just two normal guys who were just flabbergasted at each other's, although I didn't really have crazy drumming ability, but when you've been playing drums for so long and it's an atonal instrument and you're not getting anything out of it, you're playing to the music, that's fun. And Jeff learning from his uncle Larry how to play guitar, which was fun. But the moment he heard me do a fill or something, he was looking at me. And then the moment I heard him, play Revolution by the Beatles, which we have recordings of, by the way, from my father, it was just energetic. There's nothing that you'd never want to do. And again, our fathers would load up our gear and we were doing tours of elementary schools around the county. And who can resist, girls 2 grades older than you in elementary school wearing Jordache jeans and a Pat Benatar sweatshirt? I mean, it was the greatest thing on earth. You were just like, look at all these girls.
Yeah, you either needed a car or you needed a band to get the girls 2 years older.
Seriously, it was pretty funny.
Can you remember the first concert that you attended? It's shocking. I've interviewed say 110 musicians now, and most of them, regardless of what age they are now, it was either Rush or Kiss. Can you remember the first concert that you saw?
This is embarrassing. Well, it's not embarrassing. It's a band. I was quite young and they came to Windsor, and I don't even know how it happened, but Australia's own Air Supply rocked Windsor Stadium.
Woo.
And we went to that show. And again, it was just about meeting girls. So I hope I don't sound horrible, but I mean, you're a kid. That's all you wanted to do. And it was great. But that was, the launch pad to start going to see all of these amazing bands. And, I had seen Rush so many times and spent so much money that, by the time we did sign with SRO, I told our manager, Ray Daniels, how much money he owes me because I had spent so much money on his band. I wanted to commission what I spent on his band from him. That's pretty cool.
When you hang out with Alex now, do you make him pay for the meals because of all the money you sank into Rush?
Oh God, no, man, no. Alex is a very nice man. Speaking of someone who gives back all the time. Whenever I do my marathon, my 24-hour drum marathon, he's first in line to help and to give. So anonymously. So thank you for that, Alex. Always.
You mentioned that you were able to buy drums by working as a paperboy and saving up. What are some of the other jobs that you had before you became a full-time musician where music paid the bills? Our listeners love to hear all the crappy jobs that these rock stars had, so they know that the real people like us that have struggled with.
Gosh. Okay. So I've always had a job. Always. Paperboy starting when I was 9 until probably 12. From there, because I was in hockey, I started working at the sports shop at the arena, sharpening skates mostly. From there, I was pruning apple trees for a summer. From there, I got a job for probably 3 years while I was in high school, pumping gas and then learning to change oil and, power steering fluid and all of that sort of stuff. And that was great because that was about the time I was 15. And Jeff Martin and I used to have these Canadian Tire mopeds that were gas fueled and would go 35K. There's a photo of this somewhere. I think his cousin has it. It's hilarious. But there we are, you know, two cool dudes, 15 years
So
old,
badass.
on these yellow Canadian Tire mopeds. And so that helped. And of course, at that point, you know, girlfriends are starting to come around. And so you needed money. So that was the gas station. From there, I was in university and the band's playing, but I got a job at the Canada Post processing plant. And that was tough only because I would literally do a midnight shift from 11 to 7, get home, eat something, sleep a little bit, go to school at university until about 2, get back, sleep a little bit, have a band practice, sleep a little bit, go back to work at midnight or 11. So that was a big help, and I have to thank my wife's late aunt for that, Aunt Louise. She got me involved in that, and that helped quite a bit. And then I stayed in school as long as I could because I didn't know whether the band was going to happen. It's a tough road, right? Like, and I get it, and I get why people have backup, and that was my backup. I still had school, and I was going to finish up and possibly, pardon me, possibly become a teacher. So that's where that ended, and then all of a sudden, you know, the band was signed, and we were playing. I mean, every weekend from Friday in Windsor, Thursday in Windsor, Friday in London, Saturday in Toronto, and then back for a Sunday matinee in Windsor. And that was our life for about a year and a half, a year maybe. Yeah.
So let's dive into the Tea Party. So you know, you knew Stuart and Jeff since you were young. You know, I thought you went to the same high school. I thought you guys started to know each other in high school, but it sounds like you knew Jeff since you were 11 or earlier.
Yeah.
So you went to the same high school. Your high school had a delicious name. Can you share the name of your high school?
We were from a township called Sandwich West. So this was Sandwich Secondary, and it's not home of the hoagie. It's not home of the sub, but yeah, we went to Sandwich Secondary, and there's such it was great. So Jeff and I, of course, were in and out of bands, always in the same band until at least grade 9. But then we started experimenting, and you make new friends, and we're in and out of different bands. And we met this cool kid named Stuart Chatwood, who still had a bit of a English accent, like a touch. And he was super cool, but he didn't play anything. And he was left-handed, and Jeff is left-handed but plays guitar right-handed. So he showed Stuart literally how to play, and then he'd switch to bass and then back to guitar. So yeah, then bands in and out with each other all the way through high school, playing high school dances and so on and so forth at different places. And yeah, it just sort of kind of grew from there, you know.
And at what point did the three of you guys who had already known each other, had played together in various forms, what point did the idea of starting like a legit serious band together, the Tea Party, where did that start?
Sure. So Jeff and Stuart had a band that came from the high school. So once they were done at high school, I think they went to university for a few months and then decided, forget it, we're moving to Toronto. We want to try to make it big. And I was rah, good for you guys. Like, go for it. So they moved to Toronto, and kind of in between there, before them moving, or I think near the end of high school and then while in university, or maybe while in university, Jeff Martin and I did a blues duo. So what we did is he'd play and sing, and I had a set of Taurus pedals where my hi-hats were, and I would play the bass parts with my left foot and play the drums, which is a little easier than you think, but it was so much fun, and it's challenging, but once you got it, you got it. So we used to make incredible money as two, you know, broke out of school, out of work kind of guys, and it worked out really well. So while that was going on, he moved to Toronto and would occasionally come back to Windsor, and we do these gigs, but he's trying to make it in the band, the Stickmen, which were amazing band. One time, both of the guys were down and we were drinking in our favorite watering hole called the Coach and Horses, which is right downtown. It's gone now. They saved the building, mind you. And we were just having pints as we do and chatting with, I think it was one of the managers who used to have Jeff and I in to play as our duo. And she said, "Hey, I've got something coming up in 3 weeks. Would you guys be able to put the duo together?" We said, "Oh, okay, well, we'll think about it and whatever." So we go to the table and Chats is there. And I looked at Jeff and I said, "Well, why don't we just do like a trio? So I don't have to do the bass pedal thing." And Stuart's like, "I'm in." Sounded like fun. So at this point, their band was getting a little bit rocky. And we decided to go up to Cherry Beach Studios in Toronto on the water. Is that still there? Cherry Beach Studios? No,
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Anyway, we went there. We had a marathon jam session. You know, everybody says somewhere between 8 and 24 hours, but it was probably about 10 hours or so. And we just laid out 2:45s or 3:45-minute sets of, you know, standards that we all knew, and it wasn't that hard to get together. And we brought that show back home to Windsor for a Friday and a Saturday night. And the Friday night had, you know, the average crowd of maybe 80 people. It's a smaller pub. And then the next night, word of mouth got around, and there was about 120 people jammed in there, and then up the stairwell, and then out the door and around the block, because word had gotten out that we sounded good, I guess. So that was the beginning of when we started talking, should we do something? And it kind of fell onto their shoulders. I mean, they had a really good band who was, you know, getting a modicum amount of attention and success in Toronto area and so on. But, you know, they just didn't feel it just wasn't a good fit at this point. So we said, okay. And then was I going to move to Toronto, or were they going to come back down here? And so they ended up moving back down to Windsor so that we can save some money and really work on our craft, because this way, that Coach and Horses venue had 3 floors, and the very top floor was empty. They allowed us to create our own studio rehearsal place, because they knew when we would be booked downstairs, which was literally every other weekend at this point, they knew that they were going to make a lot of money because the crowds were insane. And so we built this studio out of the old fish market from London, because the Coach and Horses and the old fish market were all in the same building. They had these freezer walls, and we built a studio out of freezer walls. We brought up couches and chairs. We had a rec room. We had an old pool table. We had everything. It was amazing. And we did that for probably 2 years. The hardest part about that was trying to get up the stairs, because these stairs were brutal. And, you know, you're coming from a show at Call the Office or something, and it's 4 a.m. and you're just like, oh God, get these things up these stairs. Jesus Christ, it's so heavy.
All the amps.
Oh man. And Stuart, God bless him, made this great drum case for the entire kit, that once you emptied all the drums, you put the case back together and it acted as a drum riser. Brilliant in concept, but the weight of this thing had to be 300-400 pounds. And it was just, you know, it was tough, but we had some pretty strong girlfriends back then.
Was that, yeah, you chose your girlfriends based on upper body strength. Was that the most important gig in the Tea Party's career? Because if the person from that venue does not ask you guys to play, maybe the trio doesn't form.
Exactly. And her name was Cynthia, and she was great. She's friends with Kelly Hoppy, Mr. Chill, and it was essentially a blues bar, but they let us come in, and because we had always been going there, like since we were 17, just lying about our age and watching these amazing blues artists from Detroit come in and just wow us with their prowess and their fingers that are this long, and just, you know, blowing everybody away. So yeah, it really comes down to that moment when she had asked us to, you know, to play. I guess. Thank you for bringing that up. I'd never thought about it that way.
So I have some kind words sent in from somebody that was there all the way from the beginning. This is from Stuart Chatwood, the bass player for the
Oh,
Tea Party.
jeez.
So he says, Jeff has had a passion for music from a young age, and I was amazed at his drumming chops as a young teenager. As we've spent the last 35 plus years together, it's been a pleasure to watch him evolve into a model citizen that cares deeply about his community and the well being of others. So that's from Stuart.
Oh, Chatwood. I love Chats. He's amazing. He's the most well-rounded, gifted person I know. He's such a good guy.
So in 1991, you guys released your debut album, self-titled. This was recorded independently. When you think back to that album, what comes to mind?
Okay, so the album was recorded within those walls, those freezer walls. And the funniest thing that comes to mind was we did it all ourselves. And I remember being in the corner on that heavy duty drum riser that Stuart had built. Everything's mic'd up. And going through a couple takes, and you play the song a million times, but I kept, fucking it up. And I'm like, come on, man, let's get this together. And Jeff said, you know what? Let's just not roll film, just roll tape. Just keep playing, So okay, I'll just keep playing. So I'm playing away, and then I'm looking over and I'm seeing the thing spinning around, and I'm like, you son of a I'm playing, and I didn't mess it up. And then he tried to Jeff continuously tried to pull the tape's not running.
That's the oldest trick in the producer book.
Yeah, and you would know, right? So I was pretty green when it came. Well, we all were pretty green when it came to recording at that point, but that was hilarious. So that's one of the things that really, really stood out was the fact that they were tricking me into believing that the tape was not rolling. So
with you guys recording that album yourselves, do you think that really helped Jeff to go on to be the producer that he's become?
Yeah, he really, really wanted that, and he's such an incredible musician. I mean, he can play anything with strings, and he's pitch perfect, and and he's pretty humble about it, despite what the exterior may show. He's so good at what he does. So when it did come time to negotiating, when we were offered a record deal, that was probably the third thing that was being mentioned, is that, oh no, we are self-produced kind of thing. And it was a tough cookie to nut to crack, but that's what happened. Yeah.
So it's really hard for a band to sound unique with the amount of music that's released globally, yet somehow from the start, the Tea Party had a signature sound. How important was that to the band to really cultivate that unique sound?
We loved it. I mean, of course we got our comparisons, and every band does. And the way we looked at it was, if you're going to compare us to anyone, if we're the Doors with meets Led Zeppelin, well, thank you. It doesn't get much better than that. They were throwing them as shade, and we were like, well, sure, Jeff's a baritone, plays guitar, just a little bit better than Jim Morrison. And you know what I mean? It couldn't have been much better. So those comparisons help. I mean, if you're compared to someone that you don't appreciate, I guess that would be a bit of shade, but we always tried to be ourselves. We never really wanted to be a band where everyone is expecting the exact same sound, but different songs. And God bless the bands, AC/DC. Who doesn't love AC/DC? But it's the same sound, the same drum sound, regardless of who's playing. And they have the big fat wall of guitars and the very thick 2s and 4s on the snares. And that's what they do. And that's wonderful. But it's just not what we wanted to do. And there are a lot of bands out there like that now. And I can appreciate it, because you get into this wacky industry to do something different and to challenge yourself and to not punch in and punch out. And when you start recording the same types of things over and over, it almost feels like you are punching in and punching out, because you're playing them live every night. And the last thing I want to do every night is be 4 on the floor and just, yawning through the half set kind of thing. There's no time, because every limb is moving almost at all times. So it's wonderful that way. We've set it up nicely for ourselves.
When you guys first started those recording sessions, was the goal just to record a demo to try to get a record deal, and then it ended up being a full length that you released independently?
No, we wanted to do an album at that point, which was good. I mean, I specifically remember, as I was talking earlier about doing the Windsor, London, Toronto back and forth. I remember, and I don't even know how it happened, but Hal Arbor, he just passed away, I believe, on Edge 102. We had finished a show probably at What on Front Street, is where we normally played. And we were coming home probably at 4 in the morning, and we heard Save Me, the indie version of Save Me. And we were just like, what is happening? So that was the big thing for us. And we didn't really have to do the 3-song demo kind of thing. I think we had done that even in high school. And I do believe we have a rejection letter. I think Stuart has a rejection letter from Warner back then. But that's what you do when you're kids. You just try. But our position then was, let's do an album. And then we ended up getting a publishing deal before we got our record deal with Warner Chappell. And at that point, Jeff Kuliwick was fielding different record companies, and EMI came along and said, yeah, we'd love you to record, and we'd love Jeff to produce or co-produce if that's cool. And from there, we did a 3 or 5 song sort of Capitol Records, Capitol before EMI Records demo kind of thing. And they loved it. And then we got to go back and finish it. So that's that easy enough story, I guess.
Is it true that independent album that you guys only printed about 3,500 copies? So now, you've remastered and re-released it in the last few years, but
Yeah.
Is it true that there's just 3,500 of those originals that are probably collector's items now?
Yeah, I think the way it worked is I think the first pressing was 2,500. But then, as I mentioned, we were getting lots of friendly feedback from Edge 102 or whatever it was, CFNY 102 back then. And so we ended up doing a small second pressing of maybe 1,500 or 1,300. I think there's 3,800 total, where we do thank CFNY and so on and so forth. Because for us, as young guys in a band, how cool does that look? You're thanking these radio stations that you grew up dreaming of being on. So, we listed some of those and some of the people that came along and helped us along the way, and our new agent and that sort of thing.
So you mentioned you signed with EMI. Then in
Mhm.
1993, you guys released your major label debut album, Splendor Solis. 3 singles, The River, Save Me, and A Certain Slant of Light. The album reaches the top 20 in Canada. It ends up going double platinum, gets Juno nominations, Best Hard Rock Album, Best New Group. What did those Juno nominations mean to you? I mean, you've had 13 nominations over the years, so you probably just get used to it. It seems like every album you put out got nominated for something. Maybe you take it for granted over the years, but those first 2, you guys are in your early 20s. What did it mean to you that your country acknowledges your passion, your hard work, your talent? This is Canada's Grammys.
Yeah, it was very exciting. To put the cherry on the top was the fact that we had been in Europe by then for about 2 months and still had probably a month and a half to go. And while we were there, we found out we were nominated and so on and so forth. And it was a nice feeling because we really didn't know what was going on back home because there was no internet. I mean, I'd buy a phone card and talk to my wife and you'd memorize that 27-digit code. But I think we had just finished playing in Berlin, and we had gotten news from our manager that we had been up and up for these. And we just thought it was fantastic because it's a lonely road out there when the world is as big as it was back then. It's very different now, and I'm not dismissing it, but it was really hard. Like, you're gone away for 3 months with barely even able to speak to your wife or your girlfriend or your parents or whatever because you're such a young guy. But that was refreshing, and it was an honor. My goodness, I think we're in the same category with the hip. So when you're young, you're thinking, oh my God, our song is just past the hip on the charts. And it's not like yeah, we're better than anything. It's no, it's not that. It's just like, wow, we're even being considered at the same level as the people that we've admired for so long. Like imagine 10-year-old me looking at a chart, seeing my band, and Rush had huge chart success all the way up to number one, but now they're at 28, and we just surpassed them at 26 or something. Like it was just like, oh, what's happening? So yeah, so much fun back then.
And what thoughts, memories, emotions come to you when you think back to that major label debut album that really kickstarted this adventure you've been on for 30 plus years?
You know what? We were so young, and you got to meet so many amazing people in the industry. So the industry obviously has changed in 30 years, but back then, it was still a time and a place where you had, an album rep, a record rep, and that was David McMillan, who's amazing. And yeah, he's done everything in the industry. And then we got to know the whole record company. But then when you started going on the road, you're meeting local reps. So you'd meet these local reps in Winnipeg, local reps in Edmonton, Calgary, Montreal, and I still know them all. And they're all on to doing usually something within the industry, but they've all moved on to something greater and better. And just to meet these people and hearing about how intricate it is. So I remember one example, and I believe it was Calgary, where the record rep, everything was popping. The River was probably out, and we were probably about to do a second single, or maybe the second single had come out. And the record rep was talking numbers. So when you're in a band, you don't care about how many units or how this product or this, and and they were just shooting all this mumble jumble. I'm like, break it down. What are you talking about? And he said, we were expecting the overall 2-year period of this first album to sell max 40,000. And everyone was very, very excited about it because of this. And he said, I just came back from this record store, this record store, this record store. I have a pre-order now of 8,000 units. And I'm like, is that good? He goes, we're in Calgary. This is 8,000. They're going to sell them all next week. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So it's those types of things that were so new and so foreign to us. Maybe not Jeff and Stewart, but I was just so enamored with the entire process of us being able to go to another province, another country, and watch someone sing the lyrics back to you, and watch a younger person air drumming to what I'm doing. That it's phenomenal, and it's such a high that you don't really think about those numbers and the product and so on. And I just found it pretty fascinating.
Normally when a band signs to a major label and they're recording their debut, the label wants to choose an established producer that has a track record of success. That's as much of a guarantee that they're going to get a great final product that's commercially viable. We mentioned before that Jeff was able to produce that major label debut album. He was like 24. Like, that's unheard of. And you mentioned not only did they allow him, but that was actually, they were asking if he could produce it, I believe, when you were signing.
Yeah.
What did it mean to the band that the label had that much faith in you guys, in him as a producer, and that by having Jeff as a producer, you would hold on to that creative control in the studio?
For the band, it meant everything. Again, we were very green around the gills, but this just meant, artistic control, just everything that we wanted to do without constraint. I mean, some of the songs clock in at 7 minutes, 8 minutes, and it's just unheard of, especially back then. This is when grunge was just about taking off. So for us, but I should point out, on the first album, EMI asked if Glenn Robinson, who's an amazing producer / engineer, so on and so forth, if he can be in studio with us in Burlington, Vermont, to act as, the medium between this massive board, the massive studio, help engineer songs. There's so much to learn. So as that master, that truly helped Jeff, I think, become the producer he is today. So Glenn was very cool because his father had produced, the likes of Corey Hart and so on and so forth. He had just finished doing another EMI artist, 13 Engines. I think it was Perpetual Motion Machine. They're amazing. He did their record. And for us, he came in and, none of us had ever been in a real studio setting. So he really, really helped us as a band, but more specifically, he sat with Jeff and showed him this, that, and whatnot, and quite a few tricks of the trade as we were recording, which was wonderful. So we do have to give props to Mr. Glenn Robinson.
So I went back and watched the music videos for the 3 singles from that major label debut album. And I thought that you guys did a great job with those 3 videos to really share the worldly sound and visuals that the band would further build for the rest of your career. I thought you did a great job of introducing the band to the world through that medium. Were you guys taking the music videos very seriously with how it could help you guys achieve what you wanted?
So again, being very new, I remember this was June 6th at 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. The river was done. And that's the first time we ever met Renee Beach, who was our stylist and still is occasionally, but was our stylist all the way through our career until probably 2002. And she really brought the proper aesthetic. She really helped us with that. The director, Floria Sigismondi, who is world renowned now, she did an incredible job, so much so that we brought her to Australia for A Certain Slant of Light because it was so, necessary. And her visuals really helped, put across that, I don't know, I want to say like untampered sound. There was not many tricks done in the studio. Everything was pretty dry. There's no trickery, there's no this, there's no that. You hear mistakes in the songs, which I love. So I think with the video, and we got even more and more vested into that because it was a cost. These are costs that you need to recoup as an artist. And when they start cross-collateralizing those costs with different albums, you're like, are we ever going to get out of this hole kind of thing? So you really wanted to be able to take charge. And we did, and Stuart did it especially. Stuart is very much interested in all the video artwork, et cetera, et cetera. So it helped a lot.
So if the video game Guitar Hero approached the Tea Party and they were requesting just one song that they would put in an upcoming game that fans around the world could play guitar alongside, what song would you submit? So from that album, The River, it'd be hard to beat The River in Guitar Hero. And from later on in the career, maybe Writings on the Wall is pretty badass on guitar. What song comes to you for Guitar Hero choice?
Okay. So what song comes to me? Oh, geez, there's so many.
There's some pretty badass guitar riffs throughout the discography.
Yeah, I can't even remember the song right now. Was this on the pre-questions? I did not see this. I don't know.
That's all good.
Jeff has a really good, you know what? There's a solo, The Ocean at the End. So our latest album, which is 10 years ago, but the full-length album, The Ocean at the End, the title track, The Ocean at the End, I think is fantastic. The guitar solo at the end, it's probably the only song I think off that album that we still perform live. And it's just one of those mood pieces that starts off quiet, very Pink Floyd-y, and by the end of it, it's just this massive, homecoming of love and heartfelt and unadulterated passion. And Jeff is just wailing on it, and it just goes on and on. And man, yeah. So I would say The Ocean at the End. definitely. And I'm glad I chose something that is not from the earlier collection, because you should pick up The Ocean at the End.
There you go. So instead of just asking you guitar questions, I'm going to ask you some drum questions. So this is
Okay.
the first fan question. This is from Kendra Roy. Her question is, what song do you find the most challenging to play?
Um, hmm. I would probably say Army Ants, which is a song off Transmission. That's a very fun track to play. It can get a little heavy. Transmission is very heavy because I just beat the snot out of the drums. But Army Ants is very fun, very difficult. I remember not mocking, but borrowing from Matt Cameron from Soundgarden, a little bit of my bell action in the chorus of that song. And whenever I'm hitting the bell, the kick drums at the same time. There's just a lot of work that goes into that song. And mind you, it's not difficult. It's just a fun song. But if it ends up at the end of the set, that's when they become difficult. Transmission, for example, a very easy song to play. But if you play it like I play it, it's not easy. It's just a lot of work.
As a guitarist listening to the Tea Party discography, the song Save Me sounds like it would be impossible to play on drums.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's so easy. I've learned how to control my breath when I play that song, because there are some heavier parts that require a little bit of muscle, but honestly, I get to catch my breath in the beginning of that song. So if we play something heavy, and there's no talking, say, between that song and Save Me, I can go right into the pattern, and rest assured, I am breathing in my nose, out my mouth, and just kind of taking it easy, because you don't have to beat the hell out of the drums, because it's such a nice little pattern.
So we have some kind words sent in from an iconic drummer who says that the song Save Me changed his life. So this is from Rich Beto, former drummer for Finger 11, Saint Asonia, and he was over in the UK touring with Daughtry recently, which is amazing.
Oh, amazing.
And he sent in quite possibly the longest quote in podcast history. It's a full page, and I'm going to do my very best to read through this. All right. So here we go.
Okay.
Rich says, when I saw you were having Jeff on the podcast, I couldn't wait to write something. Let me start with this. Jeff is one of my favorite drummers of all time. I saw Jeff in the Tea Party live so many times before I ever got to know him. I've been such a huge Tea Party fan since their very first record came out. The drumming on the song Save Me changed my life. It is in my top 3 drum performances of all time. The musicality of it, the groove of it, and the almost drum solo section halfway through blew my mind when I first heard it. The groove he created for the intro and verses on that song are one of the coolest patterns I've ever heard. Then I saw him play it live and was 100% brought to tears, like for real, to tears. The power of it live was stunning. It took me years to figure out what the hell he was playing, and I probably still have it wrong today. It's a song that I show drummers that may not have heard the song or the band before. There have been many a back lounge late night air drumming sessions to that song with some pretty notable players out there. When Edges of Twilight came out, I couldn't believe how the band and songs had grown into full-fledged arena rock band anthems. With these magical videos to go along with them, all the guys had a godlike presence to me. The songs, the videos, and the look of the band members, they had it all. As if they couldn't blow my mind anymore, all of a sudden, I hear the opening to Temptation. Never had I heard a drummer doing this before. The use of samples and drum programming into the songs and his kit made Transmission such a huge example to me of what growth meant for a band. Top to bottom, perfect album. I could go through a bunch more of their records, but I think you get the idea of what Jeff means to me in my musical life and journey. Years down the road, when I got to meet Jeff and open for the band, I remember thinking to myself, okay, act cool. Don't fanboy out on him. Don't make an ass of yourself, Rich. I'm sure I failed at that, but you wouldn't have known because Jeff is so sweet and welcoming. Jeff is an amazing human being, a beautiful family man, and loved by so many. I ran into Jeff's son over in Germany last year when I was filling in for Daughtry. He's an incredible drummer, and him and his band are working hard and paving their way like his dad did to a bright future. What else can I say? Jeff's become a brother to me now, but I will always secretly be that fanboy to him and his legendary band. The Tea Party will go down in history as one of Canada's best bands. That's from Rich.
All right, interview over. I mean, geez,
Drop the
he
mic.
is such a nice guy. I think I remember the first time I saw him with
Finger
uh
11.
was it Finger? Yeah, it was Finger 11 at that point. And I believe it was at Stages in Kitchener. And yeah, they blew the roof off. It was amazing. Yeah, they're so good. He's such a good player, such a different style, and I've always loved that about him. I got to meet his folks too one time, and they were very, very nice. So, yeah, thank you, Rich. Oh my goodness, that's that's a little much, but thank you.
So in 1995, you guys released the next album, The Edges of Twilight. There's four
Yeah,
singles: Fire in the Head, The Bizarre, Shadows on the Mountainside, and Sister Awake. This helped propel the band into the mainstream. The album went to number 11, more Juno nominations. Were you guys feeling massive pressure to follow up the multi-platinum major label debut?
honestly, no, we weren't. We when that first album came out, the first one, we had already started writing more songs. So by the time Edges came out, we were just dying to get into studio. And one of the perks of being with a major label at that point was they said, "Where do you want to go?" And I don't know if they suggested or if Jeff said, "Let's go here," but we were on the road touring, and we were in LA, and um they couldn't accommodate our electric set because it might have been something like a BB King's or a House of Blues, and they had a big show later that night. So we were in, I think, probably doing something for an American company at the time, and a producer saw us by the name of Ed Stasium. So again, Ed Stasium fell in love with the band, and it was an opportunity to get into some American ears. And Ed really loved the acoustic side of things. So Ed's background was every single Ramones album, and of course, the extremely incredible Living Color album. So we were like, oh man. So again, I don't know if it was Ed or if it was Jeff or it was the record company, but we got to go to A&M Studios in Los Angeles, and we're just blown away over the fact that, my God, we're in LA and we're in a little apartment. And I was so excited. I'm like, you guys take the bedrooms. I don't care. I'm just going to build a little mattress on the floor and hang out and, and do my thing. So we worked with Ed, and Ed treated this whole thing exactly like Glenn Robinson did with our first record. He enabled Jeff to do whatever he wanted, however he wanted, showed him more tricks. I got to meet this drum builder slash collector by the name, the Drum Doctor, Ross Garfield. And you can look him up. He still has his place in Los Angeles. He stores thousands of drum kits from every major player you could think of. And he also built a kit for me. It's not here. No, it's
I
actually
think he was featured in a documentary on drums I just watched on Netflix a few months ago. It had Taylor Hawkins and all these amazing drummers in there.
no doubt. Now I want to go see it. But he was incredible. So he brought a kit for me. So we didn't have to travel with a drum kit. We didn't have to travel with amps. Jeff brought a few guitars, but mind you, that is where Jeff discovered matchless amplifiers, with whomever he was working with. I can't remember the guitar tech then, but we had a tech for Jeff there. We had Ross Garfield come and help me set up these drums that he let me use, and then he built a kit for me. So we were in heaven. And that second record, I mean, so much fun to do, but we were so well rehearsed. They're very much the live versions of the songs. We don't really skip anything. When we were there every day, we were having coffees with Neil Young, because Neil Young was in the studio overseeing the mixing of Mirror Ball that he did with Pearl Jam. So we got to meet Neil. We got to hang out with Neil. You guys are from Canada, huh? And met his son. It was just this whole time. And we were in Studio A, which the Rolling Stones had just completed doing the Voodoo Lounge. So Studio A was the Voodoo Lounge, and we were now the next contestant in the Voodoo Lounge. So I'm literally like just thinking to myself, oh my God, like Keith Richards and Charlie Watt used this tap. I'm going to the bathroom to take a whiz, and I'm like, oh my God, these guys are pissing in this like just weird shit. But it was just so mind-boggling to me. And then, you know, we ended up seeing a bunch of the guys from Alice in Chains, and Rob Trujillo was still with Suicidal
Ozzy?
at that point. No, I think he was still with Suicidal, but we toured with him when he was with Ozzy, which was amazing. But yeah, just people are just so friendly. And that record was so much fun to make. We had all the toys, all the percussion instruments, all everything. It took a long time. We were in no hurry. We were not given a clock. And I think the first album was still selling, so they didn't care. And we were just having a great time. We got to meet this amazing photographer by the name of Dean Carr. And he ended up being a photographer slash video artist. And he's gone on to do every Marilyn Manson, like the heyday of Marilyn Manson and all of these big bands. And he's been a friend since. But he did the Fire in the Head video, and it was, again, we had to come back and do it, but he was just so cool. The whole experience was mind-boggling.
So the album features many instruments from around the world, and we have a fan question sent in about that.
Uh-oh.
And this might be the highest praise you've ever received in your entire life. But my sister, this is the first time in the 3-year history of the podcast that she sent in a question, because she's a massive Tea Party fan. She had albums. She's older than me. She had albums from the Tea Party before I even knew what music was. And she sends in this question. So this is from Colin Martin. She asks, where did the worldly music influences come from, and how hard was it to incorporate those sounds into your own sound?
Very good. I guess the influences came, so again, going all the way back to elementary school and high school, very much a Beatles band. Love the Beatles, love all aspects of the Beatles. And as we got older, got into the fact that the Beatles were starting to experiment with world music and world things and world thoughts and so on. And that kicked it into the Led Zeppelin marriage of some world influences and time signatures and the quirkiness of that whole vibe. And we just sort of fell in love with it. I mean, Jeff, rest assured, Jeff was the captain steering the ship when it came to that. But he got us into this, and I couldn't help but love the fact that, you know, you're playing a goblet drum or you're playing a tabla drum, and it's sounding like drops of water intermeshed with, you know, the heavy 1 and 3 on the kick and the upswing of the 2 and 4s on the snare. And just that whole, I don't like music that is very militant, that is very stuck to the grid. I mean, we didn't use any click tracks for these songs when we were kids. So I liked the fact that when it comes to an emotional chorus or a subtle bridge, that you're going to slow down or you're going to speed up and you're going to make it heavier. And that's sort of the vibe that I loved with all of the world instrumentation, because it adds this audio intrigue that is not normally found in your average rock song. And for us, that was just another notch in the belt that made us stand out a little bit more. The hard part was then trying to figure out, how do we do it live? And that's when all the toys came out, and that's when Stuart literally learned how to play piano and play the keyboards with his feet, and I had all the Doombecks. I had a Doombeck strapped, literally. Steve's Music in Montreal. I got this Doombeck from them, and they put these screws on either side, and then I got this marching band belt thing, and I had it between my legs, so we'd be playing drums, and then the sticks would go down, and then I'd be like, it was crazy and so much fun. And I'm never doing that again. No. But that was a very une bonne question, Colin. Merci. That was great.
There you go.
Yeah.
You guys have several instrumental songs across the discography. We're talking
Mm.
about this album. So the song Badger's instrumental. How do you decide as a songwriter if a song should remain instrumental or if you should be adding vocals and lyrics to it?
Well, okay, so I can't talk too much about this. This is Jeff after all. Jeff is such an incredible acoustic guitar player, open string tunings and so on and so forth. It's usually us that will tell Jeff, you know what, this is just gorgeous. Just leave it alone. There's nothing that could go on here. I always thought it would be cool because he's quite the poet if he would do something like that and have a speaking part over top of it. And maybe he'll do that eventually, but it's usually up to Jeff. I mean, he is the master when it comes to all things strings, so I really don't want to talk too much about it.
Yeah, you did have a hidden track that had spoken word on it, didn't you? Was there one with Roy on it, or
Roy Harper, yeah, that was the hidden track at the end of the Edges of Twilight. And yeah, gosh, now you're really stumping me. I didn't listen to this for a while. I usually listen to our demos because they're so different from the live records. But yeah, there's that hidden track at the very end of the Edges of Twilight that everyone should check out and go buy the new, go buy it first.
what's different is now with streaming,
Yeah.
what they have to do is when these albums are on streaming, they have to take the hidden track and then put it on as a song
Bonus
on its
track
own, So
yeah.
I guess more people come across it now.
Yeah, there's no waiting a minute and a half to hear what happens behind the scenes and stuff like that.
So you guys actually made history in 1996 because you were the first Canadian band ever to headline Lollapalooza. Do you remember anything from that experience?
I definitely do. We had just signed with SRO management, Ray Daniels, so Rush. And so for me, my career could literally end the following year because I was just, oh my God, here we are. The Ray Daniels and his staff, who were still good friends with everyone there, lovely, lovely people. And they got this gig for us. And there we are, hanging around. The Ramones are there, like the Ramones, all of them. I couldn't believe it. And I still have the 8x10 signed by each of them. Talking with Chris Cornell, Matt Cameron, watching Matt Cameron literally 10 feet behind him, just jaw on the floor. Metallica, of course, they ended the show obviously, but they had so much pyro and stuff like that. Everyone literally needed to be cleared at all. It didn't matter if you're Joey Ramone. I'm sorry, sir. We're going to have to put you over here. And it was incredible. We became very good friends with Ben Shepherd. He saved 3 feral cats that day. It's pretty amazing. Started feeding them.
Just a hero, just being a hero.
Just an everyday hero, Look at the cat I found. He starts feeding it. It was amazing. I can't tell you how much fun that was. And that did us a lot of good. Was that Montreal or Quebec? I can't remember. Quebec City. It's one of the two. We were in La Province of Quebec, but I can't remember if it was Quebec City or Montreal. I do remember it was all asphalt, and I thought this is a little dangerous. But honestly, getting to see the Ramones side stage, who gets that? I just, that was an incredible night, and that really helped us, stay top of mind, I guess you could say, preceding the recording and release of Transmission.
So let's dive into Transmission. So this comes out in 1997. 5 singles: Temptation, Babylon, Release, Psychopomp, Gyroscope. This goes to number 3 on the charts. Again, double platinum, Juno nomination, Rock Album of the Year. I mean, you guys can do no wrong at this point. And this is where the Tea Party comes into play with me. So I was 12 when this album comes out. And my very first Tea Party experience was the music video for Temptation. So I remember being 12 years old, and there's this dark, intense video. You have Jeff Martin all in black in the water. There's a monster. There's fire. There's a girl eating hearts. That is, I remember just being struck by that. And I had to go back now and watch the video to see if my memory of that from being 12 is actually what it was. And it was an imprint that hasn't left me.
Not so scary, right?
I still a little scared, but So when I listened to this album, it to me it had a heavier sound. Yes, there's the industrial influence that comes in, but it also was just heavier and meaner. Where does
Yeah.
that aggression come from on this album?
Well, to be honest, the aggression came from a lot of the words written by Jeff, and he was going through a hard time then. But that whole album, I can tell you that after the success of The Edges of Twilight, and there was a meeting at EMI or Capital, I think it's EMI at this point, um, in the boardroom with the lovely sound system. And Jeff walks in with three of the demos that we had been sort of kind of working on. And it was all of this wacky percussion, which was great, interspersed with all of the loops and ideas that he had going in. And then he's trying to explain it, and everyone in the room, from the president to the A&R people and everyone, just are looking around going, what is happening here? What's happening? Is this a bad moment in music history? But it was just so very raw, and I mean, no words were on it. But it came to fruition. Obviously, we had worked really hard. We recorded it mostly at Jeff's place in Montreal, this ancient building, which was amazing to record in. Yeah, I don't know what other questions about that. I'm kind of stumped.
It was the success of that album extra sweet when you think back to where the label guys had no idea listening to those demos what was going to go.
I don't know. They were lovely people. I understood where they were coming from, because it was pretty disoriented when you come in and there's no words on it, and there's these crazy bits of string parts and so on that really didn't make that much sense. Like, there was 0-4 on the floor drumming on it. I mean, it was like Transmission, I think, in its infancy, is a 3/4 time signature song, and people were just like, what is happening? Where I can't dance to it. What's happening?
Well, gyroscope as well switches, I believe, from 4/4 to 6/4. I was going to ask you, is it harder to play songs that have different time signatures, or it's all the same? It's a feel thing.
So with gyroscope, that's interesting, because I remember when we were writing that, and Jeff came up with that pattern, and Stuart was really digging it, and I'm like, okay, well, where is beat one? Like, it's really hard to kind of deal. And then I said, you know what? Just lay this down and let me put my headphones on. So they laid it down, and I just started playing a 4/4 time signature, which was that much easier compared to trying to find this 6/4 thing. And they were like, that is amazing, because now you have this gyroscope of music, and that's why it was called gyroscope, because it was just kind of going in and out of scope. He couldn't cope. This is gyroscope. So gyroscope is one of my funnest songs to play. I really liked it when we got to do the 25th anniversary tour of that. That was a great one to play. A lot of fun.
With the samples, the sequencers, the loops on that album, did you have to develop a new skill set for maybe programming and then figuring out how to pull that off live?
Yeah, thank God for Stuart Chatwood, like I said, because he taught me as much as he could. But Stuart is the type of guy I mean, he was a techie before the word techie was even in existence. He used to take apart radios when we were kids and just build them back better, sort of vibe. So Stuart has always been the man behind all things technology with the band, and he helped me through all of that. And it's wonderful, because if you've got someone like that on the team, it makes things that much easier. If you don't, then you're hiring a crew member who doesn't really know you all that well. And Stuart has always just been so massively involved in that. I mean, he registered our band name, I think, the third week the internet was in existence. Like, it was crazy. So pretty cool.
Is there anything you can say about the drum sound for the intro of Temptation? You have kind of the whizzing sound, and then
Mhm.
the drums come
Yeah,
in, and
yeah.
it's just it sounds so good. Anything you can share about that?
It's a pretty standard loop. It's very Led Zeppelin-y. Everyone thinks it's When the Levee Breaks, but it's not. But we took a pretty standard loop and we just dirtied it up as much as we possibly could. And that's all it is. And then we programmed it into these SPDX pads, which were pretty new at the time. And the difference was with those pads, I also had the kick pedal pad, which was not really used much back then. So if you're playing your standard kit, you've got your kick drum and your hi-hats, right leg, left leg. I'd had this tiny little kick pad just to the right of my regular kick, hidden under my floor tom, so I could play the whole kit on these, 8 pads and the floor with my kick drum, and it just made things that much easier. It was nice because people thought, well, how are you going to be able to do this? And are we just going to be running a track that keeps this drum thing going? And we didn't. I would play that. And then the last hit of that snare before the actual snare drum portion would come in, the intro, we programmed a snare that had a lot of reverb on it, so it would carry it, be like, so we were just filling everything with as much sound as we possibly could, and it worked out immensely. It was nice to be able to do it without having to run loops. And then we tried different things like making the drums bigger, fatter, putting triggers on the snare so we could have 25% electronic pad sound from the loop and the actual snare sound. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? People are just here for the rock. Let's do the electronic portion. And then after that, we'll just, switch right over to the acoustic stuff. It's great.
So there's quite a few bands over the years that have covered songs by the Tea Party. So the band Nevermore covered the song Temptation that we're talking about, and their version actually charted on the Billboard chart. So on the active rock charts in the US. Is it an honor to have other bands cover your songs like you've covered other bands' songs in the past?
I did not know this at all. I had no idea. I think I have heard that cover before, but I had no idea that it charted
It
at all.
says it's the Tea Party's only song on the US rock charts, and it's the
Well,
Nevermore cover. So they went to number 36 on the top 40.
you could have did better, guys. You could have did better.
They needed more cowbell. It would have been top 10 for sure.
Sorry, what was the question? I'm still blown away. I didn't know.
Oh, it's all good. Just we're celebrating your career, so I got to bring all the facts in here. Is it an honor when other bands cover your music?
Oh, of course, but I really don't know that many. I mean, I see a lot of guitar players who love classical guitar, mimicking Jeff's style or taking on a particular song that he does. But yeah, there's not many bands. I mean, I think the Foo Fighters should cover a Tea Party song and bring it to number one. Really,
We're
I
gonna
think
put that out there
be.
in the ether, but it
Let's
looked
do
like there
that.
was probably 5 bands that have covered Tea Party songs, and they
Oh
all
yeah.
seem to be like really heavy bands. So I don't know if metal fans just love the Tea Party for some
Hey,
reason.
I love it. Let's do it.
So another
That's
single
awesome.
on the album is Babylon, and
Yeah.
the music video is unique. So at the time, it was almost unheard of to do a one camera, one shot music video. So you guys were kind of pioneers back then with this video. How hard was it to capture that one take that ended up being the final take?
Okay, so that for me and for Stuart and for most of the actors was not hard at all. For Jeff Martin, who was strapped into this harness and they were dragging him up like pulleys and just making him fly through the air, that was, I'm sorry, I love you, bro, but that was hilarious.
And his mouth has to be perfectly on, which is the hardest
And the
part.
music was blaring and it was so loud and it was really fun. That was George, forgetting his last name now, but George had done many videos for us, and that one was really cool. He had actually done the Bizarre video for us in Istanbul, Turkey, from Edges, but he did that one, and that was a cool one-shotter and a ton of fun. And that video was actually done in the same space OLP did a video long before us. It might have been from their first record, but it was this old, I don't know, it was like this hollowed out place of earth. I don't know. It was very strange. But anyway, try to find the videos if you're looking for something to do one day.
So I have one final point about this album, and then we'll move on to the next one. So the song Psychopomp, that is actually my favorite Tea Party song, period, from the entire discography. Is there anything you can give me as a super fan of that song about any behind the scenes, whether it's the first time hearing the music or figuring out your drums for it or the recording or the release, like anything you can give me that I don't know about that song would be amazing.
That song was lyrically initially written by me when I was 17, and it was called Something More. And it was just a bad dream that I had, but Jeff and I used to write back and forth. And there are versions of Something More out there from when we were teenagers. But Jeff went back while we were recording, and he was just listening to some old cassette tapes and found that, and he thought, wow. And Something More had these, I forget what the Roland, this little drum component, electronic drum component thing, Roland something or other. And that's what the drums were on Something More when we were in high school. And then Jeff created this idea that, why don't we take that song and turn it into Psychopomp? And I'm going to change up the words a little bit, but I'll keep something more in it. And I thought, this is amazing. So again, we wanted to do a slightly different drum pattern from Temptation, obviously, that we eventually programmed in. And that song is still probably my favorite song to play. There's something about it. It's very powerful at the end, and it goes really well with orchestras whenever we're performing with orchestras. Yeah, it just lends itself nicely to, it's a nice timeless song, I think.
There's such a great slow build to it of intensity. And
Yeah.
then do you remember the first time hearing that piano, like the piano notes that are amazing in it?
Oh, yeah. I thought that's a little Nine Inch Nail-y, but I like it.
Again, you were talking about early on, there was maybe comparisons to the Doors and Led Zeppelin, and it's like,
Yeah,
who better to be compared to? So when you start to have a little bit more of the industrial sound, I mean, who better to be compared to the Nine Inch Nails, right?
absolutely. I thought this, again, I could be compared to much worse. And to say that no one has any influence on anything is silly. So, you can choose the band, and I can tell you, some sort of influence, I'm sure, that's been worn on their sleeves over time. But yeah, that was a very different, very unique album to make. We had a lot of problems. There was some dust from this renovation that was happening in the 350-year-old building that Jeff was living in, and we had to redo a whole bunch of stuff. And yeah, it was a crazy time back then. That one.
So in 1999, this is the year before we thought the world would end in Y2K, you guys released Triptych, 5 singles, including Heaven Coming Down and The Messenger. This is your 4th album in a row to go double platinum. At that point, did you think that's just the norm? Everything we do, double platinum. Like that's the basement floor, no matter what, always double platinum. Is that the feeling you got?
No, like every year we always tried to get to the American public. Like we didn't write to get to the American public, but we certainly tried to get released in America. And we thought for sure that this one would be the one, because it was so friendly. And if you kind of look at the growth of the band, or the development of the albums over the years, this one was kind of harkening back to when we were in high school, and the whole new wave vibe and very melodic music, and not mimicking the synthesizers or the cheesy drums or anything like that, but the melodies that were inherent in those songs when we were kids. We were really going for that, and that shone through. And I don't know, but no, I don't think that we thought that was the norm. I thought that one, we thought that one was really going to take off. We're going to go 3 times platinum on this one. But as you get older, you realize none of this matters. It's more about being able to do what you want for a living and realizing how lucky and how blessed and how honored you should be feeling to be able to do it when you see so many people out there just unhappy but doing their best to provide for their family. And so, there was never been expectations. I don't think. We just always hoped that something would catch on in the States just to broaden the audience. I mean, we love playing in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Canada, but you just always want to do a little bit more. And when you get the opportunity, it's wonderful. But if you don't, now I understand, and it's not that big a deal.
So the first single, Heaven Coming Down. So that's the band's first number one single in Canada. And it's still to this day the band's most played song on Spotify with 5 million plays.
Okay.
Does it have a special place in your heart being the first and only number one? And then why do you think people love that song so much?
Well, they love the song because when you're in a band and you've got a modicum amount of success, you'll get a lot of people that'll come up and say, oh, I used that song at our wedding, or that was my sister's favorite song and she was listening to it as she was passing away. And you're just like, oh my God. And those are heavy moments, right? And it's an honor, like, oh my goodness, this is what is happening. So I think people like that song because the words are beautiful. The chimey guitars of the 12-string Rickenbacker are beautiful. The harmonies at the end, the crossing of the lyrics with the backup lyrics at the very end, it makes for a very wonderfully powerful song. And that's one that's never been covered, I don't think, which is weird to me. But I love it. I got a little tired of playing that song because it's not the funnest song to play on drums. And selfishly, I thought, oh, here we go again. But now I get to sing some backups in it, so it makes it a lot better.
So I have a confession about the second single, The Messenger. Are you ready for this confession?
Okay.
I was 38 years old, aka yesterday, when I found out that this was a cover of a Daniel Lanois song. To me, it's a Tea Party song. I never knew different until yesterday. Should I be ashamed of this?
Well, being that you're in the industry, 100%.
And I just saw Daniel Lanois at Blues Fest in July. He was playing with Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. He was a special guest. I've seen him in concert with Ray LaMontagne. Like, I'm familiar with his work. And never since 1999 has it ever come up to me that The Messenger is a cover song. So I don't know what to say.
I do know he often says, I'd like to thank the Tea Party for the royalty checks from this one, because it still does well on radio. But yeah, there's something to be said when you're online and you read something and someone says, oh, my favorite song is The Messenger, I love the Tea Party, and it's just like, oh, a stab to the heart. It's not our song, but we made it our own, and we love Daniel Lanois, obviously. So that was a thrill to be able to record that. We had already been doing that song live for quite a while, and he's the undisputed world champion of producers in my book anyway. And we actually got to play an event at the Toronto Film Festival one year, and we were his band. So we went to his house. It was incredible. And we were just jamming away. And he's like, and then I'd like to go from here to here. And I'm like, okay. And it was phenomenal. That experience in itself was worth my career, because he is such a beast. And, he was such a kind, gentle man when we were playing with him. And, he's going into some wacky time signature. And I'm like, I don't know where the fuck he is. What's going on? So, but what a thrill that was.
Did you guys play The Messenger as his backup band?
No, he was like,
funny.
Well, no, we won't be doing that.
Yeah.
No, because we do it very different than him. His is so ethereal and broken down, and we kind of made it a pop rock sort of vibe.
I'll have to go back and listen to that one now, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
One final thing about this album, you'll like this. Rock Hard Magazine released a book of the 500 greatest rock and metal albums of all time, and Triptych is on that list. 500,
wow.
Yeah, 500 greatest of all time. I thought you would enjoy that little stat.
Where's that magazine from? It must be European.
Rock Hard Magazine. Good title for a magazine. So.
Rock Hard. It's probably German.
Yeah.
They love the Tea Party in Germany.
Nice. And We have another fan question. This is from Michelle Otier. Her question is, can you explain the technological and creative process the Tea Party employs, considering that the members live so far away from each other? So I don't know if it's how do you use technology as a band to write when you're not in the same city?
Yeah. So to write, we're always in the same city. So if we have an Australian tour, which is supposed to be next June of 24, an Australian tour, we'll go for 2 weeks ahead of time, hang around, start writing, bring our ideas that we've already got. After the tour, we'll stick around for another 2 weeks, and we've created 5 or 6 good moments. We'll lay down some drums, and it won't be the drums that end the song, but it gives Jeff something to work on and Stuart something to work on. And then on the technology side of things, yeah, that's super easy because during COVID, for example, we did some covers, and it was just a matter of me going into the studio and dropping the drums to a quick track that Jeff emailed me with his vocal and an easy tracer on. And it's not that difficult. I mean, if anything good came out of COVID, I guess the technological side of things vastly improved or became easier for everyone to use. So it's not all that big. I mean, I'm kind of hoping after this next tour we're out with in the fall that Jeff can hang around for a bit, because we do have a lot of ideas we'd love to get recorded.
So in 2000, you guys release a greatest hits album. So Tangents, this goes platinum. There's a new single, top 20 single, Walking Wounded. Most bands, you know, maybe they have one hit or maybe they have 2 hits if they're lucky. For you guys to have enough hits over your career to put out a greatest hits album, and then that greatest hits album spawns another hit and the album goes platinum. Does it mean something to you to be able to even release a greatest hits album?
Yeah, I mean, it's an honor, and I didn't even know it went platinum. I don't know if I got an award for that, but anyway, no, that was really cool. And something interesting about when that came out is I think we held on to the video for Walking Wounded until we had a big release party in Toronto. And I'm not sure what the cinema is, but it's the escalators that go up almost 4 or 5, you know.
Yeah.
It's massive. So we had a contest and you could win to get in through Edge or whatever. And we kind of hosted this party, and then we showed the Walking Wounded video to accompany the single, and that was shot in Havana, old Havana, Cuba, which was outstanding. And yeah, that was pretty cool. I don't know how well the single did. We had a lot of fun playing it, mind you, but
it was a top 20 single, so that's
was it okay?
Solid, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would expect it. I think we just wanted to sneak something new into the into the mix. But an interesting story with that would be there's a little tiny kitten at the end of the video of that song.
Is it the same kitten that your friend saved at Lollapalooza?
No, but Jeff Martin hid the kitten in his bag and brought it home.
That is too funny.
This is pre 9/11, so you could do things like that. Hide the kitten in your satchel and bring it.
You could bring live animals. Now you can't bring a toothbrush with you.
No,
it's a weapon.
no.
So
yeah.
Well, let's dive into the Inner Zone Mantras. So this is 2001, 3 singles: Lullaby, Angels, Soul Breaking. Rock Album of the Year, Juno nomination. That's like expected now as I go through these albums. This is a gold album. Is it true that the album was recorded in just 20 days? This was a faster album to make?
Yeah. Again, when we would go into studio, we were already usually performing these songs live. And, you know, the bread and butter of a Canadian band in the industry is live performance. And we just, you know, let's not waste time. Let's just go in, bang it out, make sure the tracks are good, introducing some horn parts, horn sections, you know, a lot of stuff on that record, and very kind of all over the map. I remember writing a portion of this up north on Northern Ontario, and it was a great time to write it. but things were changing at that time. I think that was the advent of burning CDs and so on and so forth. And we're noticing a change. It's like, so you're not selling platinum anymore, you're selling gold. And we're like, okay, well, whatever, so long as we can still play in front of that same amount of people or more. And that proved to be true. So it didn't really affect us, other than if someone had a bruised ego over the fact that they didn't go platinum, which I didn't care. I mean, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But yeah, great record. That was done in Morin Heights. That's the last album we done in Morin Heights. And, you know, God bless Morin Heights. It's gone now. But yeah, a lot of great albums recorded there.
So you followed that up 2004 with 7 Circles, 3 singles, including Writings on the Wall and Stargazer, another gold album, top 5 album, another Juno nomination. This is one of the band's most positive sounding albums. Were you guys in a different space for this recording?
I think we're in a different space. The album began recording in Maui with the one and only Bob Rock, which to us was like, this is pretty cool. Mind you, Jeff was very skeptical because Jeff's the producer, and here you are working with Bob Rock. And a lot of the fans, our friends, our fans, weren't cool with this because they thought, well, what's happening? Why is Bob Rock producing? Whereas Bob Rock really wasn't producing. It was, again, the same situation. And this was, I don't want to say was the last ditched effort of the record company to try to get us some momentum in America, being blatantly honest. But I'm like, you know, I'm cool with whatever. I'm the drummer. I just want to have fun, make wicked music, go out, tour, play, live a wonderful life, and provide for my family. So I don't think Jeff was very, very much interested in being there. My day was waking up in the morning at 6, going for a jog, coming back, making the best coffee in the world. You know what I mean? And just, you know, start making breakfast, wake the guys up, go to Bob's house from literally noon until 6. We would go surfboarding or bodyboarding from 10 until 11:30 every day. It was outstanding. It was like the best, literally the best time ever recording. It's unreal. But it fell upon, you know, a lot of criticism because of the fact that we brought Bob in, and he's a sweetheart of a man, with no disrespect to him anyway. I loved it. Jeff, not so much. Stuart, I think Stuart understood why the company wanted to do it, and I don't think he was miffed about it. But at the end of the day, we did 3 songs with him, and we ended up coming back and working with Gavin Brown on the rest of it, who was also pretty hot back then. I'm sure he's still hot now.
Billy Talent, 3 Days Grace. Yeah,
exactly. So a lot of the younger bands that were doing that much better than we are, especially in the States, I think that was the move there. And Jeff got along with him much better than Bob, because I think Bob has this, you know, it's not an ego. He's just got this repertoire of, you know, magnanimous repertoire behind him. And you can't really argue with it, whether you like him or not, right? Or like his productions or not. It is what it is. So he got along much better with Gavin. And I think, you know, that's how we finished the album. And it was a fun album to make. I remember demoing that in Jeff's house when he lived in the Beaches. And it was a great, great time, a great opportunity to, I don't know, just have fun and not worry about, you know, what's going to happen with things. You know, it's in the record company's hands now, as they say. So it was good.
Yeah. So for our listeners that don't know, Bob Rock produced and I believe mixed Metallica's The Black Album in 1991. And in the 32 years since then, there is no album in the US that has sold more copies than the Black Album. Literally, they put out the Black Album in 91, and since 91, nobody has sold more than the 17 million copies that the Black Album sold. And that's why the record label, if they want as much of a guarantee of a big hit, that's the pinnacle right there.
Yeah. And I believe, like, if you look at charts, you'll still see that album and many classic albums in the top 100 still. Like, it might sit at 91 this week, and then next week it's at 79, but it's always there. And it's amazing to me, you know?
Yeah. Globally, the Black Album still sells 1 million copies a year, which is insane.
Which is insane.
Yeah. And there's I'm such a music nerd, but the Black Album is only one of 3 albums that has been on the charts for over 10 years. You're talking about it seems to never leave the top 200.
Okay,
It spent
so
over 10 years on
yeah,
the top 200.
so it'd be like Dark Side of the
Dark Side of the
Moon.
Moon. And I believe Guns N' Roses' Greatest Hits
Yeah,
hasn't left the charts because everyone, it's just such a, I mean, it's such a mainstream
yeah.
ish
And
success.
and before that, you would have had like the Eagles
Greatest Hits.
choose the Michael Jackson record, whatever you want, Thriller,
Yeah.
probably, right? It's unreal how they stick on like that. You see charting now 564 weeks. It's like, what?
Yeah,
How
as a
many
band,
weeks?
if your album can be on the charts for like 2 weeks, you're happy with it.
That's exactly it.
So 4 of the songs on the album, so Writings on the Wall, Luxuria, Overload, Coming Back Again, they all have these badass riffs, and it's like the band is jamming. Were you guys having a good time? It feels like the band was just jamming and having a good time on at least those 4 songs.
Yeah, I really wish we were playing those songs live. Like Luxuria to me is just a ripper, and I love playing that. So Coming Back Again has all the percussive elements that I love, but it's just a banger. But it I don't know, it just never resonated, I guess, with Jeff or Stu to put it in the set lists. And now, further to that, we understand the fact that a lot of people do want to hear the hits and so on, and then you try to sprinkle it with some fan favorite deep cuts, but those just usually don't make the mark, I guess.
Well, after 30 years, you have the gift and the curse of having so many hits that it takes up your entire headlining set time
Yeah,
to play all the hits.
and I can understand that. I mean, I just went to see the Psychedelic Furs in their opening show without Squeeze in Buffalo, where we're kicking off our tour without I Mother Earth. And it blew my mind. Like, I knew every song but one. And they still didn't play all the hits. And I was thinking, oh man, I really miss this one. I really miss that one. So I do get it as a fan, that you want to hear, the songs that you remember, and it reminds you of whatever, the birth of your child or your first prom or so.
So I guess last thing about this album, this isn't even a question, it's just a comment, but the vibe in the verses of One Step Closer Away is amazing. Like, just the vibe is so good. I'm blaring it in the headphones, and it's just such a great groove.
That is a really good song, and I love the drums on that song as well. I think Holly's on that record too, isn't she? Isn't Holly McMarrow?
Yeah, she's on Wishing You Would Stay.
That's
so
right.
That's
Yeah.
the only guest appearance on a Tea Party album, period, unless there's one on a newer album.
Roy
Oh,
Harper.
the spoken word. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But we
That's
did
a
do
hidden track. So does it actually count?
But
Yeah,
we did a song with Roy though called Time,
okay.
that you can probably find. But Holly, that was my idea, and I don't care what anyone says. The year before we recorded that record, we were at the Junos, or I think I was, it just may have been Stuart and I, and I was hanging out with my friends in Nickelback at the time. We were at a bar, and Holly was doing a bit of a showcase, and I thought, oh man, we haven't seen Holly since the Edgefest days, because she was always spotlighted on the Edgefests. And I just approached her and said, would you mind, and she thought it was great. So she flew in and pulled that off in, I don't know, about an hour. So amazing.
So a decade after that album, and after a hiatus, you guys released The Ocean at the End. This is in 2014. There's 2 singles, including The Black Sea, which was a top 40 hit. The album is top 20. What led to the band getting back together after such a lengthy time?
Yeah, it was weird. So the time spent apart, it was just a necessary time. Everybody gets on each other's nerves. Jeff wanted to do solo stuff, which I completely get. Stuart just married, kids, the whole thing, and it was time to just chill out from everybody. But after a while, the agent is calling, and your old manager is calling, asking, do you want me to field these calls, because we're just getting offers to do festivals. You guys haven't done anything for 6 or 7 years. Let's do something. So Jeff was in town visiting his dad, and we met up, and it was as simple as that. Why don't we just give it a try? I think everybody's, shaking off the cobwebs, and he had 2 solos out by then, I think, or maybe 3. And so off we went, and it just turned into, wow, let's do this. So then we started writing again, and it was great. That's actually the only album since the first album that we actually wrote in our hometown, because they were in Windsor quite a bit, LaSalle, Windsor. And it was crazy. I mean, we were in a rehearsal hall in our hometown, which never happened. And we were writing these songs, and we ended up at Revolution in Toronto. It's the nice big, yeah, beautiful room. And yeah, it was nerve-wracking for me in the beginning, but it worked out very, very well. And I love that record, to be honest. It's really good.
So starting in 2019, you guys put out 2 EPs, the Black River EP and Sunshower EP, and those two together make up the full-length album Blood Moon Rising, released in 2021. 4 singles, including Black River, which peaks at number 3 on the charts. What were the challenges of writing, recording, and releasing music during the pandemic?
So that was the deal. We had all of this music ready to be recorded, but it's so hard to get together and record. So we had some of the drums were done here, and some of the drums were already done. Some of the drums were about to be done, be ready, waiting on Jeff to do final vocal tracks. It was a mishmash, but it was organized in the way. And the only way we could really do it by trying to maintain, a bit of integrity was, let's just put out 2 EPs before, we're completely forgotten about, and let's just try to keep a little bit of momentum while everyone is, sitting around at home, unfortunately. So it worked out really well. That was a tough time for the band, mind you. We'd lost our longtime sound man, Johnny Watt, and we still miss him. He's a lovely man, and we had dealt with this type of loss before. We had lost our manager at 38 years old. He was Stephen Hoffman, and that was preceding Triptych, I think. Or no. Whoa, way off. No, this was like in 2003. So yeah, it was a tough time. But anyway, we did Watsy's song on there, and I like those. I didn't realize Black River had gone all the way to number 3, because that's a fun one to play. So
That'd be another good one for Guitar Hero.
yeah, and you know what? I'm going to remind the guys that we should add that to the set list, because we're going over things right now for the upcoming tour.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that tour. I guess just a couple things before the tour. You guys are now celebrating over 30 years together as a band. How improbable is it that the same 3 guys are the same 3 members in the band? I mean, normally there's people leaving and, coming and going and replacing and feuds. It's the same trio that knew each other back before high school. So one, how rare is that? And improbable. And number 2, does it feel like 30 years that you guys have been a band?
No. So as we're talking, I'm looking at the screen in your background, and I'm looking, oh, there's Moist, and they don't have their original drummer. There's OLP, a few changes, everyone, Big Wreck,
All of them.
Big Sugar,
Finger
all
11.
of them. Yeah. And it's I mean, it's great. It's weird. Like, we've literally grown up together. And when the band was apart, I think what had happened is everyone realized that we're in this brotherhood, we're in this family, but we're also in this business. And what starts to happen is you're in this cycle, and every band can attest to the fact that you write, you record, you tour, small rest, write, record, tour, small rest. And you just get into this routine, and after a while it's like, why am I doing this? This feels exactly like work. This isn't that much fun. And I think everyone needed to take a breath and literally feel the fact that you are very blessed and you are very lucky, and you should be grateful. And I wake up every day thinking how grateful I am for all of this. And it doesn't feel like 30 years. I'm not the first person in history to say that, because time is fleeting. It feels playing our little high school concerts feels as long ago as recording our first album, our first 2 albums. It doesn't, the time just melts into each other. So No, I mean, I love the guys. We're the best of friends when we're on stage. We don't get heartbroken when we're not together because everybody lives so far away, but we're in constant contact now. And I think that's what makes the difference because, you know, whether you're whether you're a guy or a girl in a band or you're doing something else and you're part of a team effort at work, you got to have communication. If you don't, it just kind of falls apart, you know?
Yeah, they say being in a band is like being married, but then it's like, well, try being married to two or more people. It's hard enough with
That's
one person.
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought I got to bring this up because I thought it was cool. So political groups associated with the Tea Party movement have been trying to purchase the band's domain name for years.
Yeah.
It's estimated that the band could get over $1 million for this website. My
Mhm.
question is, Jeff, is this a backup plan for retirement if needed?
Okay, so let me put this into perspective. So $1 million. You get the $1 million. The $1 million after tax turns into what? 750, call it, probably 700. Then your manager takes their commission. Then the lawyers charge you and do all of their commissions. So at the end of the day, you're left with about $150,000, which is a nice amount of scratch, but no one's buying a house. You can buy
And
a
then
nice
you're
motorcycle.
dividing by the members, and then
Oh,
there's yeah.
it's ridiculous. So no, that'll never happen. And that was pretty funny though. I think that's when the band first started touring again or something, and it people were like throwing $10 million around. And if it's 10 million, I might no, I wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. One billion. Yeah. What's
Yes,
the number that
one
changes?
billion dollars, we could do a lot of good for the world. So I would take $1 billion and change our name to uh be I was gonna say big and then wreck, but no, the
Yeah.
same name. So Our Lady Wreck, there we go.
Amazing. So let's actually dive into the tour. So this
All right.
cross Canada tour, it's October and November with another iconic Canadian band, I Mother Earth.
Yeah.
I got my tickets the moment it went on sale. I got the very first date, which was Ottawa at the Bronson Center, I believe on the Saturday.
Yeah.
All my friends and I have a huge group coming. We got on at 10 a.m. We got our tickets, and then that date sold out. You added a second Ottawa date, that date sold out. You added a third Ottawa date,
I
so
know.
we were leading the charge in Ottawa to set the
Seriously.
precedence. And then I believe your Toronto show sold out. You added another date. You
Yeah.
added whatever Quebec City. So the tour, it looks like there's a huge demand. People want to see you guys. People want to see I Mother Earth. What can people expect if they buy a ticket to this tour?
Well, for me, I think they can expect an amazing show. We've seen the mothers a million times, and they've seen us a million times. We've never performed on stage together. If you get the little advantage ticket ahead of time, we're going to be doing an acoustic collaboration, which is really cool, and you get in earlier. So that's a good option if you're into that. It also gets you in earlier if it's a non-seated event. You can go right to the front, blah blah blah, that whole thing. But selfishly, from my standpoint, I just can't wait to hang out with other people while we're on tour. I mean, I love Jeff and Stuart. We always do, art galleries, nice dinners, whatever we can do when we're on a day off. But to be able to do that with Chris and Jag, and of course my old friend Edwin from the Crash Karma days, it's going to be so much fun. And I think what's going to happen is that's going to translate in the show because there was always, and don't take this the wrong way, there was always friendly competition amongst all of the bands from the 90s sort of thing. And no hard feelings or no, disregard for anyone. It was just always friendly. Now, no one gives a shit. We're just going to go out and have a great time, play as long as we possibly can without being kicked out, and that's about it. I think it's the new way for bands of our ilk to be touring, and I don't see why more bands aren't doing it. I mean, if you can offer your audience another band that you love that are very like-minded, similar in sound-ish, then and similar in generation, why wouldn't you? So I love the idea. I hope it continues. I hope in a summer or two, they bring back Edge Fests or even something smaller. It doesn't matter. They can do it in arenas instead of football fields, but I just love the whole concept and idea of being out with a band and co-headlining and, just kicking butt. It's going to be so much fun.
So similar to what you're saying about having a double bill, I saw a Big Wreck with a Econoline Crush not too long ago at the Bronson Center. That's exactly what you're talking about. Just a great double bill that,
something that everyone enjoys, and it's they're very different bands, but they're from the same era. And man, we used to tour with Econoline so much, and lovely people, amazing. Trevor's such a great singer and a lovely human being, but it just offers the audience, because there is so much out there nowadays, and we know people, a lot of times this is their night out, and you don't want to screw it up. I don't ever want to screw up anyone's night out. I want to be able to put on a show that blows their mind, and when they walk back into work on Monday or Tuesday and they're just talking about it and thinking what a great time that was. And I appreciate that. I know what hard work is like, and I know how hard people work for it. And I think people are going to have their heads turned with this one, because it's going to be a great time.
I saw you guys at Blues Fest in Ottawa a couple of years ago. I believe it was Wide Mouth Mason that was opening that night. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And
last summer.
Yeah, last summer. So I was there this year as well. So I tend to mix up all the band. I'm there every day. I'm just there for 2 weeks every day, taking in all the music. So you guys had a great set. I remember messaging you saying that was one of the top 5 performances of the whole festival. And
thank you.
So I'm excited to see you guys in October. Let's talk Crash Karma quickly here. So in 2008, you guys formed the super group Crash Karma. You mentioned Edwin of I Mother Earth, Mike Turner, Our Lady Peace, Amir of Zygot. So released 2 albums, Crash Karma 2010 and Rock Music Deluxe 2013. You guys charted 4 top 20 singles, Awake, Fight, On My Own, and Tomorrow. And I was able to infiltrate the Crash Karma camp. And I have some kind words from Mike Turner.
Oh, geez.
Who he was a part of Our Lady Peace for their first 4 or 5 albums, their most iconic albums, including the diamond selling album Clumsy. I have up on my wall here somewhere. So this is what Mike has to say. What can I say about JB? I'm very happy to call him my friend. He's that very rare thing, a truly great man. Let me catalog his gifts. Brilliant, inventive, and a ridiculously powerful drummer. He's a generous musician. Always collaborative and supportive no matter the situation. He even manages to be the most fun guy in the room at the same time. He's a devoted family man, as well as a tireless worker in his community, remaining active in several charities. It's almost annoying. While on the road, he and I generally shared accommodations. And even with that level of contact, I have no irritations with him. Do you have any idea how unlikely that is? I can complain about pretty much anything, but not about JB. I view Crash Karma as a wonderful gift. Most of my memories with the band involve laughing my head off, often inspired by Jeff. We've had a lot of great musical moments as well, always driven by Jeff. From playing in Afghanistan, Egypt, a little part of France, and touring coast to coast here at home, Jeff always made his surroundings better with great playing and an ongoing sense of play in everything else. Oh, and he also has great hair. And yes, it really does look like that naturally. So that's from Mike Turner, Our Lady Peace, Crash Karma.
Oh, I love Mike. Mike can talk like no other. I love that man so much. He would literally lull me to sleep with some of his prose that he'd be speaking of that night. It was amazing. I love those guys. Oh man. CK, best stuff ever. It's good.
So time. With you and Edwin being on tour for October, November with the I Mother Earth and the Tea Party joint tour, is there going to be any talks behind the scenes of anything Crash Karma? I'm asking for the fans,
I don't know. We've been talking because it was just Edwin's birthday yesterday or the day before, and we have this thread going on, this goofy thread that we've had going on for 10 years plus. And I know the guys are all coming out. I know that Ed and I are anxious to see everybody all in the same room and go for our favorite Chinese place in Toronto. But yeah, I'm open to anything all the time. You know that. I can make time no matter what I'm doing. It's always fun with those guys because you know what? At the point that we got together, it was we don't need to prove anything to anyone. Let's just have a really good time. And I didn't realize we had that much chart success, to be honest, which is nice to hear. And we had a great manager at the time, Jake Gold, who takes care of all the hip stuff again. So,
The Hip, The Watchman. He's had a
yeah,
lot of success.
So all of those guys. That's so kind of Mike, though. I'm pretty lucky, man. I'm so lucky. I've got good people.
So as we wrap up the interview, I like to ask musicians what bring them joy outside of music. Can you add any details about your three-legged dog, motorcycles, power skating with Bob Probert, collecting wine, any of those four things? Can you give us
Well, so
info?
my dog, you might have heard my dog earlier. She was sitting in this bed. So you're propped up right now, just so everybody knows. You're on my pool table. So I put my dog in this bed, and then one of the boys came home. So now she's on a bed over there. What can I say? No, she was a dog that we got during COVID. She her left her right leg is missing, so her left leg is kind of centered itself. She's the cutest thing on earth. She's a red toy poodle. You put her in the pool. She loves to swim, but she only goes in circles because she's only got the one leg. She can be a little bit yappy, but and I never wanted a dog, but she, of course, if you don't want her, she's my favorite, or I'm her favorite now. So there's that. The wine collection, my wife has put an embargo on my visa, so I can no longer buy any more wine until we start drinking it, and I'm not drinking now until after the tour. So the wine will be fine.
Are you not drinking? You got to fit into your tour outfits,
Oh
your
boy, you don't
shiny
even
leather
go there,
pants.
buddy.
No?
Don't even go there, my man. I started CrossFit about 3 weeks ago, and it's kicking my ass. So it's good though. I feel good.
So final two questions, and these are deeper questions. Can you handle two more questions?
I don't usually talk this much. I'm ready.
All right. So I'm going to hit you with a few stats, and then I'll ask the final two questions. So I want to wrap up the Tea Party's career in a little bubble so you can soak in all that you've achieved. Because, a lot of times we don't take a moment to step back and actually
I don't like
soak
that
in
though. I'll do what you want.
Okay, here we go. You can put the earmuffs on or close your eyes. So the Tea Party, 9 studio albums, 3 live albums, a greatest hits album, 23 music videos, 3 EPs, 25 singles, 13 Juno nominations, 6 Much Music Video Awards, 7 albums that have either gone gold, platinum, or multi-platinum, and 3 to 4 million albums sold globally. When you hear all of that, when you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
I am most proud of the fact that I got to be in a family business with my best friends and provide for my family. That's what I'm most proud of. What was the other half?
Most grateful for.
Oh, I'm grateful for everything. Come on. The fact that the modicum amount of success that it has given me, and I've stayed in my hometown, it does allow me to do a lot of charity work and more like top of mind awareness, working with so many different charities, from the Canadian Mental Health Association and Harmony in Action, which is adults with disabilities and mental issues and so on and so forth, or learning issues, I should say. I just love being able to do that and provide the time that needs to go into it. I am so grateful for that because, and I don't know, it's just a wonderful feeling. It really does feel good to give. Selfishly, it feels really good to give back.
Final question. If you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could whisper words of advice. So you've had a lifetime since then of lessons and mentorship and ups and downs and dreams and all this stuff. If you could just whisper a few words to cute little Jeff sitting there. Did he have amazing hair back then? I don't know. But if you whisper, if you whisper some words, what words of advice do you provide to help little Jeff get through this life experience?
I would say something to the effect of, when things get really hard, or when things get really tough and when you feel like nothing is going right, things always end up going right. You can't worry about even when they go wrong. So let me rephrase that. Don't worry about things so much, because at the end of the day, you're here for a very short time, and do the best you can and love the people who love you back. That's about it.
And is there anything you'd like to say to the fans that have supported you as a musician, who have supported the Tea Party for 30 plus years?
Yeah. Well, they know. I thank them all the time, and I'll thank them again. You guys know. I love you guys. I'm looking over here. No, I'm right there. I love you guys, and I appreciate it. And what you've given not only myself, but our bandmates, this wonderful opportunity to be able to perform for you. I wish we could perform more in Europe. I wish we could perform more elsewhere in the States, but maybe hold out some hope. But yeah, thank you. I'm blessed and I'm grateful.
So as we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a drummer. I want to acknowledge you for your charity work that shows others why that's important, and hopefully inspires other musicians to give back and do the same. I want to thank you for being one of the nice guys in the music industry. As you know, all the kind words that were sent in, they all of them said he's such a nice guy and he gives back and he's selfless. So they can't all be wrong unless I got just the right 5 people. I want to thank you personally for all the incredible music you've put out over the last 30 plus years with the Tea Party and with Crash Karma. This is the soundtrack to my life from a teenager until now. When I went back and listened to the entire discography, I actually knew almost all of the music. And I realized that I've been along for the whole journey with you guys. So to sit down with you here today, it means a lot. And last but not least, I want to thank you for this interview. Me being able to sit down for the last 2+ hours with someone that I've admired and been a fan of for a long time. I've been able to ask all my questions. You've answered them. I'll be able to sleep better tonight than I've ever slept because I have no more questions for the band. So
but
Jeff, thank you so much.
You didn't ask me about, no, just kidding.
Oh no, we'll have to do a follow-up then. So Jeff, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joel. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy we finally got to do this. I know we've been trying and this has been wonderful. So thank you for your patience.
You're very welcome. So to the Jeff fans, to the Tea Party fans, to the Crash Karma fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.